GM, we are live again with the Graviton Podcast, and we are very lucky to have a really diverse set of speakers here with us today. We have Jeffrey Brewer, whom many will recognize as Graviton's program director, also a VP at Mulana Capital. We have Erebus, who's the founder and CEO of FourPi Networks, a firm that is driven towards creating credit scores for everyone in the crypto space. And of course, we have Manish Tewari from Spydra.app. He is the co-founder of Cooves.com, which is historically famous as the first fashion retailer from India to get listed on the London Stock Exchange. He has also led previous successful exits at Pocket and Piggyback before entering the world of Web3. And he is now leading the biggest migration in enterprise technology in the Web3 space since the era of AWS. So once again, thank you everyone for joining us on the Graviton Podcast.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you for the introduction.
So today, the agenda that we have in front of us is to discuss the need for decentralization as a whole from a consumer perspective as well as from an enterprise services perspective. And I'm confident that we can get the right viewpoints from both of you. Also, Manish, I met Erebus during the India and India Blockchain Week chain of events. And his claim to fame is he is one of the funniest people that I've met in Web3. And we originally wanted him to be...
I mean, earlier I was sad. Now I have to be funny and sad. Okay, cool. I'll keep in mind.
And I also thought it'd be a great idea to have all of us here on the podcast because we sort of all of us in a way complement each other in terms of what we know, what we do, and what we're looking for and what we need. Erebus is, this is at best my speculation. He wants to understand the nuances of an institutional fundraise. He's currently approaching growth with a unique perspective of creating a decent partnership footprint within the Web3 ecosystem. They've tied up with Unstoppable Domains and a few other name brands to go ahead and increase their awareness and footprint within the community. And from Spydra's perspective, Erebus, we are currently trying to figure out the best positioning which works well within an enterprise ecosystem to sort of drive the point home that a DLT or a distributed ledger technology is a necessary intervention and step in today's day and age. And why do we need the right people who understand the right safeguards that need to be in place for this adoption to be a seamless and frictionless process, and how to make that more efficient? I would want to start with my first question aimed at Manish regarding your inspiration and your motivations, your convictions that led you into the crypto and Web3 space, because you have enjoyed tremendous success, to say the least, as a Web2 entrepreneur. And back then it wasn't called Web2. So what led this transformation journey? What convinced you to start up in this space?
Thank you, Shom, for the kind words. I won't say that I had tremendous success, but yeah, I can say that I was lucky to work with people who contributed in, let's say, some those decent kind of success. But yeah, now coming to Spydra, I think so. We all have been, let's say, I am a techie. I've been writing code since when I passed out from my college, and though I hadn't dealt or I hadn't done something in Web3 in terms of writing code there, but still I was very, very interested in the technology part of it, especially the immutability part of it, that how a transaction can be, you can say that the transaction hasn't been tampered through some mathematics, finally through some logic. And I think that was the most interesting part. And obviously after that, a lot of things came, cryptocurrency came, smart contracts came, and then obviously NFTs, then DeFi and all those things. Just that my conviction was not very much on those kind of things, just that I didn't see a lot of value. And when this enterprise blockchain started coming into picture, where is there a need for something? And that's where my interest in the technology part started, that okay, is the blockchain can solve some real use case, can solve some real problem. And that's where we thought that, okay, this is something which is interesting. Now, still, it was not a big motivator for me to start a company. Now, I think in 2021, I met Ashwath. Ashwath is my co-founder in Spydra, and we go a long way back. He's from my same college. And prior to Spydra, he was working in Microsoft, where he had worked in enterprise side where he worked on developing the blockchain platform for Microsoft and all those kind of things. So our discussion started that can there be a platform where we can there be a platform where, let's say, an enterprise wants to adopt blockchain, can we make that easy? Because in itself it's a very complex piece, and to manage it is another different ball game. And there we saw that there is a big gap. Either companies are working in a, let's say, a very let's say project model, that okay, you outsource something and then they do it, it takes time and money, or they are either building AWS for blockchain. There was none which was solving that problem in a DIY mode. So there we saw that okay, there's a big opportunity, we think, and if we can create a product which is seamless, which is simple to use, simple to understand, I think we can create a big opportunity. And that's where this whole idea started. Okay, let's start doing something. So finally, the motivation was not just it's Web3. I think there is we as founders personally, we believe that blockchain is not a solver of every problem, but there are certain problems which can't be solved best other than blockchain, and that's where we wanted to do something, and we saw that there is ample potential which can create a lot of difference, which can bring a lot of value to our end customers. And that's where, so basically the potential of idea was one of the main motivators, which said that okay, let's do something in this space. Yeah. And that's how we started Spydra. Yeah.
First, thank you for that. I think we started off on a good note in terms of the message that we're trying to convey. I also want to ask you, Manish, you have been someone who is, who was front and center stage, leading a startup from an early 2-3 member team, from a bootstrapped stage to an expansive team that has launched at successful MVP, that is acquiring users at a high rate. You've led consumer facing models as well. You've raised funds multiple times. What was the difference? What if you had to list out, let's say, the top 2 or 3 differences or things that ran differently between the time you first ventured out into Web 2 or the original era of the web, and when you ventured out into Web 3 enterprise?
I think the one of the fundamental difference between my first company, which was Schools, and then obviously this. So Schools was essentially B2C, correct? So the redemption is very faster in B2C. You make the site live, you give some discounts, and you can see immediate customers, correct? So the thrill is immediate. That was not the case in obviously in Spydra. We had to take some time to build the platform, understand what the customer needs. So that kind of patience is something which is definitely there's a difference in B2B and B2C. That is something which we had to do, and I had some experience. So then we knew that okay, we have to make the product at least PMF, at least the product market fit should be there before we go to the customer. So that part is something which is a very clear difference. Second, I think, and again, this has been my experience that typically when I was pitching coups, let's say Pocket or Piggy Ride, all were something which were simpler concepts. So it was easy for us to talk to, at least in terms of the VC part of it, where to make an VC understand okay what we are doing, whether it's big or small or not, it's something it was still easy. I think the enterprise blockchain for me is still not very easily understood by people. I have had multiple conversations with many VCs who are Web3 investors. So they have asked me questions like why a public chain and why. So there have been very rudimentary questions which we have to answer and make them understand, okay, there's something where we are working on. So I think more education, at least from the VC point of view, because I think the more fascinating stuff about blockchain is about cryptocurrencies, exchanges, and all those kind of things. So I think enterprise blockchain, I think, is slowly taking its prominence in place. But yeah, that was something which we have to continuously do, at least when we are talking to people who are not, let's say, who are from, let's say, the other side of the industry, who are not very typical Web3 experts. So we had to do that, and we are still doing it. So we have to explain that, okay, why do we need private blockchain, right? So it's a very standard question which comes. So I think those were 2 things which were clear difference.
So prima facie, it was more of an education and awareness challenge towards all sets of audiences, from what I understand, because of the lack of understanding of what enterprise blockchain really means from someone who is managing a senior technical role at an enterprise, and the differentiation or justifying the need for a specialized DIY service to come in and intervene.
It's actually not justifying the need also. It's like, so again, see, when you look at blockchain, I think 90% of the news is around cryptocurrencies, correct? It's about, so it's not just that people don't know about blockchain, but the noise around cryptocurrency so much that it gets subdued. So I think that's where it is. But now, as we see, there are wherever you see in terms of be it governments, be it enterprises, and in every industry for that matter, I think, and even when we look at now the public chains for that matter, Avalanche, Polkadot, Zk-Sync, Polygon, every chain has with their enterprise solution. That means that they see the value there. They see that okay, there is actual real business problem getting solved. So I think now, and obviously, see, smart contracts came 7-8 years back only. So still, I'll say that in terms of blockchain is not that old, but now people have started, or even the big public chains have now started focusing on it. So that's where we see. I think now these things will at least become easier. But what I was trying to say was that to raise money from a VC, that's where we are. Maybe let's say when you talk to potential VCs, they have an understanding about DeFi, NFT, cryptocurrencies. So they understand that language, they understand the models also. But when we talk about enterprise blockchain, that's where a little bit of knowledge still required. But yeah, I believe that things are changing for good. And because of this, so many implementations happening across industries, obviously, this will be a thing of past in, let's say, next 6 to 8 months.
That's actually encouraging. I want to bring the same line of questioning to you, Erebus, post this. Also going a step further and I'm trying to understand, you also identified a niche problem that needed to be solved. Manish and team have identified a mature problem that needs to be solved on the enterprise front. And speaking of the consumer front, we are familiar with credit rating systems such as CIBIL in India, which I think is the most popular and most commonplace brand that comes to mind when you talk about credit score. And while the crypto space and the DeFi space from a consumer facing angle has been expanding, not a lot of people have been paying attention to credit rating and credit score. And I would speculate that this is thinking ahead. So what led you into the crypto space? What convinced you to solve for credit rating specifically within cryptocurrencies? How did you identify a future roadmap wherein this product and this platform grows? And I'll get to some of the synergies between what you are trying to do and what Spydra is trying to do also later during this call. But first, this part. And the same question that I asked Manish. I believe you are an early stage founder. This is like the first time you are doing something entrepreneurial. So as a first time founder, what were your challenges in this space? That too.
Yeah, so I'll start with the why we started this thing or why the blockchain is the future. More or less, why decentralization is the future. For example, I'll start with the evolution thing. Like earlier, while we were evolving from animals, whatever the thing, and to right now what stage we are. So we never had enough calorie to for the survival thing. That's why we had larger group. And as we proceed like down the line, the group becomes smaller and smaller. And after the industrial revolution, like one man can produce enough calorie that the entire family of his can survive. And and after that, now like we're gonna work for one day, 1 month, you'll have enough calorie that you can sustain for the long time. Like earlier, like you can eat a chip, packet of chips, and it will be like, and you can survive on that for a day easily. And so what I'm saying is, see, we are becoming more individualistic. You may consider like where already we have seen the industrial revolution, they are more individualistic. West is more individualistic than the other part of the country, global south or something. And and now the AI thing. AI thing is giving you more power so that the one man can be more productive than 10 times, 1,000 times. It will gonna make you more individualistic. And when we become more individualistic. No, so we want to take our decision by ourselves. So that's why the crypto system is gonna helpful for us. It's giving a power to everyone. It's democratizing the power. So it will be beneficial. For example, uh, earlier, like very few people had the money, enough money to make a lot of things. Later, it started distributing to other people. In the same way, this thing is happening over here. And now, what we are making credit score and using on-chain and off-chain data. For like, what's the use of it? Like, for example, right now, it's the DeFi ecosystem is over collateralized. Like, if you have to borrow $100 of something, you'll have to put at least 150 $160 or something as a collateral, because it's very fluctuating thing. Whatever your collateral is, it's very fluctuating because it's volatile, it's not stable. So but consider you have a credit score, and using those credit score, you'll have other form of digital assets. For example, already have digital gold, like ETF and other things. They are less volatile. If you can use those assets as a collateral, it will the blockchain or the DeFi ecosystem will reach more people. So we are trying to solve that problem. Like, we're gonna make a credit score, and using those scores, we are making a global community of affluent and high trust people. And why the affluent people? Because product always goes from higher status to lower status. For example, sugar, Sahi Tukda, potato. Once upon a time, it was used by high status and influential people, and later other people started copying it. So that's what we're trying to make. And the about thing, the startup ecosystem, yeah, man, uh, uncertainty is everywhere, but the startup system makes you, it's like living a life in a 2x. Yeah.
I will later press you on, in terms of deliberating on some of the challenges individually. But I liked your analogy about consumption parity. So as a society, how much we are capable of consuming, how much do we need to consume in both in terms of calorie, what is the wealth expenditure per capita, that has that trend has always has been on a growing curve. And today we are more individualistic. Steve Jobs used to say that computers and the entire digital transformation is like a bicycle for the mind. AI is doing that. So your projection is that this is going to continue and grow further in the same rate, which is why DeFi becomes important. Yes, credit, the ability for people to borrow the prevailing form of currency also makes sense. Now, when you tried to approach, I'm sure there was a stage when you first decided, you guys formed your core team and you figured out this is the value proposition, this is the challenge that we are solving for, this is the mission that we are convinced about. When you set about trying to convince other people about investing in a credit rating product specifically, what were some of the pushbacks that you saw? Was there any pivoting messaging that you had to go through? How were you able to overcome some of the positioning challenges in order to overcome the contradictory dialogue which you would have faced? And what is working for you?
So for example, consider a simple thing. You want to go on a prom date with a girl. Okay. So if you're gonna ask every girl, like, would you be my prom date or something, then still gonna reject you. Okay. So it's better to make a personality first, then approach the girl. Then still gonna come. So in the same way, we are doing the same thing. You need user, will come with a user before you even ask for it, so that investor don't feel like their idea is validated. So even though have more trust investing, we are trying to get that thing. So currently we are increasing our user base. So we have a milestone of around, we're gonna get around 60,000 user base within a 2 months or 3 months. Yeah. So then we will try. Then we will try to raise capital. I guess then it will be easy for the VC and for us. Then it will make more sense for everyone. That's what I'm thinking.
So we've heard two different, very interesting and unique viewpoints on the challenges of fundraise and how they're approaching. Jeffrey, my next question, I'm coming to you. As someone who has spent a lot of time, I think more than any of us here, evaluating pitches from both early stage and evolved stage products, idea stage and MVP. Between the challenges that Manish had listed out in terms of the need to explain to potential VCs about the or explaining the need for enterprise private blockchains versus what Erebus mentioned in terms of first demonstrating value, because he's consumer facing. So first demonstrating value through user acquisition and then approaching the capital raise process. What are your thoughts on the subject?
Yeah, when we're talking to VCs, right? Actually, especially in the Web3 space, you have different types of, as they call themselves, VCs. So let's first define a little bit what is VC, right? Of course, you have the people inside of the industry, and then I'm calling it the Web3 industry. You have the VCs that are, for lack of a better word, I call them like the degens who made their money in like Ethereum that went up, Solana that went up, like all those kind of things. They got some significant wealth created from that, and they started at that point like, hey, let's start investing into projects, and let's do that with like 2 or 3 friends, or maybe even just one person, and they start calling themselves VCs, like venture capital. For me, that is not the definition of a VC. Like for me, the definition of a VC is a general partner who is depending on the return on investments to put his daughter to school, right? And they're working with limited partners that are putting multiple limited partners that put in money into the fund, and the limited partners are depending on the GP to grow that money. Right, so that's for me the definition of a venture capitalist. Quite often, when it comes to fundraising in this industry, is that that has a lot of challenges. But when it comes to education, you either have indeed the people who are who know everything already, right? They are. Sometimes, as they call that, digital natives, or people who are crypto natives, who have been there already for 5-6 years, have seen a lot of things going forward and going backwards, and you don't have to explain that to them. But if you have a product like Spydra, you still have to explain a lot, because it's technically not a Web3 product, right? It's not a token play in that sense. It's like a corporate play, right? So there at that point, you have to. The challenge for them is like you have to explain more to people who are like not from the industry. You have to explain what the industry is, because that's usually what a corporate product requires, like a VC or an investor that is from the traditional industry, because they fintech investors, corporate VCs that are coming from like a trading company or something else like that. But then you have to start explaining to them what blockchain is. And then, of course, on the other side, when you have like the Web3 VCs, where they at that point might even have like a mandate on the VC that they only can take tokens, then at that point you have to start explaining to them what Spydra does, right? And so at that point you really have to explain to them how you do asset tokenization. But then of course, like it's not a Web3 like pure token play, right? So it could be that at that point that VC firm only have the mandate to invest into projects that are only tokenized or bring out tokens, right? So that's a little bit a challenge for a product like a enterprise blockchain to start raising capital, because it's the best of both worlds, but it's also the challenge because both worlds don't mix that much. And you have to start explaining there a little bit more. Probably at that point for me, like probably because there will not be a token generating event, then you probably have to explain way more to traditional VCs how this works. Probably the best way at that point would be fintech investors that have a little bit more of knowledge about a financial industry. Otherwise, corporate VCs that are in the industry for instance, logistics or something else like that. Right. So that's indeed B2B investors, because that's what Spydra is in. So that's a little bit more of the challenge there. And then when it comes to ratings and consumers, like I'm personally more inclined for projects that are B2B. I've done B2C projects, but for me it's just very hard, because especially when you're putting projects out there in the Web3 space, there are people that are positive or negative about your product, and they might only have, I don't know, say $10 in tokens in your pre-sale, right? And then you don't know that, but they can be very vocal, right? While there might be a lot of people out there that have way more in that, and they still support you in a sense, but you don't see that when somebody's giving feedback on a project, like what is at stake. So I'm actually thinking that there would be a very nice market opportunity here, or product opportunity here, to have a feedback loop on projects where actually the amount of vested interest of that person will give their feedback a weight or not.
I remember having this, having this discussion within our founders office circle. So I think both of you know Hassan also, Erebus and Manish. So while we were doing the evaluations for Graviton, we kept, discussing the subject of what is missing from applications and how can this be done better. And this product idea came to mind that, there should be a CRM and an outreach tool which covers all of these aspects, which can track your reach to VCs. And I love the category distinction between VCs that you made. And in fact, when you talk about the Web3 degens, that is the small people who made money early on through crypto investments and are looking for stronger ideas to back because of conviction and beliefs, and versus the more seasoned general partners at a VC firm who are focused on ROI. And correct me if I'm mistaken, the second category, which is the more evolved and organized approach category, for them, the team that is building this product is as important, or the strength of the team, the capacity of the team to execute the roadmap is equally important as the product idea itself. This is also and team slide. I remember you telling me that it's one of the most important things that shouldn't be missed. And Erebus, the first time I met Manish was at the Age of Web3 meetup in Kormangla. And what I distinctly remember, when we called him onto the stage to introduce the product, and he never fails to do this. He always introduces his team within the first 30 seconds to a minute of the product pitch. And even today, we just saw he spoke about Ashwath, and he demonstrates the capacity of the team, the experience of the team to go ahead. I think that is one of the best takeaways that I have learned in terms of Communique. I want to come back to you, Manish, next after this. I spoke to Arpit, who's the person behind Graviton, and I remarked that, hey, Manish is a natural when you started talking about the product and explaining the pitch. And he said, no, he's seasoned, which was a better response. And I'm sure you've learned this over the years. What Erebus, me, and a lot of other viewers would also want to understand from you is how did you go ahead and so I asked you this question during the event also, the evolution of the narrative, and not just about Spydra, the evolution of the fundraising and the pitch narrative that you've developed over the years, the finesse that you have today in terms of describing the product, the team, in a very crisp and concise manner, which allows somebody who's potentially evaluating you to get the entire picture within a matter of 2 minutes. For context, Erebus, we asked Manish to do an elevator pitch, and while everybody else was mostly sort of, thinking about what to say, etc., Manish came back and asked me 1 minute or 2 minutes, and I said 1 minute, and he did his pitch. So, how long did it take you to arrive at this juncture? How much of back and forth did you have to go through in your previous teams? Also, what is the difference now that you're building a challenging Web3 enterprise facing B2B product? Plugging in another question basis what Jeffrey had mentioned. So Spydra is not in token pure play. So I'm sure this a question that comes to you often from VCs that you're approaching for follow-up rounds, wherein questions regarding your tokenomics, how do you quantify the ROI and so on?
Shom, if you can just maybe you can repeat the first question. Actually, it was some connectivity issue, so you can just
sure.
Summarize
So the first question is, what amount of iteration or variations did it take for you to go ahead and arrive at a crisp and concise definition of the product and the team structure? How do you decide what statement to push forward first? Case study being, when we speak about Spydra, you have always, this is the second time I asked you this question, and you mentioned Ashwath's experience in technical leadership, and I appreciate that. And you always know how to form the entire story within 30 seconds, 60 seconds, or 2 minutes. What is the process behind coming up with this messaging?
Okay. So I think obviously so when I think I had done so I don't do podcasts, but I think one podcast I had done where I think 2 years back, and the person who was asking, he had asked me that what is the most important thing in a startup, correct? What is the most? Is it the money? Is it the idea? Is it the team? And right. So my first immediate answer without thinking was the team, and obviously my first team member is Ashwath. So I think in that regard, I think that's where I need to just put across that, okay, for the team who is doing this is capable enough to deliver this, correct? Finally, ideas mature, ideas change, ideas pivot. Things can go wrong, but then how do you come back to it? So I think that's where I thought that's why my always, when I start with Spydra, I just try to say that, okay, this is obviously about me. If not, then I'll introduce myself, but then I also add my Ashwath and what he has done, which adds a little bit more credibility that, okay, these guys know what they're doing. I think, and specifically this problem coming in terms of the team, setting up the team, I think the problem which I faced was that because not many people are associated with enterprise blockchain. I think that's where we tried when I was hiring people also. Typical, even if you talk to consultants also, they won't understand that, okay, what is enterprise blockchain? They'll understand Solidity developers, Rust developers. But when you talk about that, I am looking for, let's say, a Fabric developer, or let's say Ethereum enterprise, or though it's similar, but then enterprise blockchain, even consultants didn't understand. So I think that's where me and Ashwath took a call that, okay, let's do one thing. Let's try to find people directly from, let's say, channels like LinkedIn, or maybe mainly LinkedIn worked for us, and then try to poach some guys which we think are very valuable to us. So we went after 2-3 guys which were very important for us. So out of those 2-3 guys, one guy joined, and that's how our life started getting sorted with, okay, he is the one who knows more than us. So we tried to hire people who know more than us in that category, and then we started forming the team. So I think that's where it became a little easier. But then it was a challenge because even consultants, when you explain it, they didn't know that what we're talking. They had no clue. I think coming to the pitch part, I think one thing which is very important is not telling the solution. I think first coming to the problem, and that's, I think it's relevant for any, maybe for demos, business meetings, even to pitching to VCs. I think so. The way I try to position my solution is that, okay, is there a problem existing? And if there is a problem, this is the possible solution. So I think that's where the story becomes a little clearer to me also, and I tried it to be clearer to the audience. So I think when I start talking about asset tokenization or what does Spydra do, so I try to explain that, okay, let's say if there is a need for multiple organizations coming together, they want to work. There are Web2 ways, but then if you want to create a truly transparent, secure, tamper-proof way, blockchain is the best possible solution. Now, if you want to do that, Spydra can help you in doing that. Spydra has a low code or a no code solution which can help you in sharing information across organizations and the use cases can range from tracking goods in supply chain to basically tokenizing loans in co-lending space, or basically tracking counterfeit pharmaceuticals. So it can range from different kind of use cases. So that's how I think, at least for me, the pitch becomes clear, that I explain, I tell about the team, I tell about the idea and what problem it is solving. Coming to the tokenomics, the second part of it, and I think this question, obviously in Graviton also, if you remember, we were discussing that what will your token and everything. So this question has obviously come, and that's where we have to explain that okay, we're not going to our ICO or something. And the way I try to solve this problem is that I go to just to the start of okay, let's say, so there is a concept of public chain, there is a concept of private chain, correct? Now in public chain, cryptocurrencies do make sense because anybody can buy it, but in private chain, there's no concept of currencies, correct? So I try to explain them in that way, that okay, why there is a need for private public chain, and if there is a private public chain, there's no need of tokenomics or tokens, because the gas fees is very, very low, correct? So then it becomes like almost as good as zero, that the miners, there's no concept of miners at all, because transactions are limited. There's already consensus protocols, so those things are not applicable in private chain. So yeah, I have got a lot of questions on tokenomics, but I try to explain them the problem we are solving, that why it is not so relevant for our use cases. Yeah.
I understand. So, thank you for clarifying both of those pointers here, and that actually gives me the perfect segue to bring in the next challenge from a credit trading perspective. One of the things that we were discussing is the need for solving or the need to solve for data redundancy between two enterprise players, especially in the lending scenario. So, when we talk about CIBIL, the credit rating score for Web2 in India, the only reason we know about this is because CIBIL score is the one which gets fetched just like the logistics data that we were speaking about from an e-commerce perspective. In the banking sector, whether you're applying for an HDFC loan or a Citibank loan, home loan, personal loan, doesn't matter. They will ask for your PAN card, the basic tax information, and then they will fetch the CIBIL score from a central repository, and then give you an instant or nearly instant decision. So Erebus, do you foresee a similar landscape? It's not happening today in the Web3 space right now. A lot of the groundwork and rules are also being written and rewritten continuously. Do you foresee the same thing happening? Do you foresee an integration do you foresee an intervention or solution such as Spydra helping you potentially tie up with liquidity providers, people who will evaluate the credit score? So I know today, as a consumer, as a wallet holder, I can go and mint my score, but for it to become utilitarian in perspective, whenever I'm trying to make a purchase or when I'm trying to secure a loan, I will have to go ahead and fetch that data. So you sort of represent one side of the equation which is already decentralized. You've taken one step and you've already adopted DLT to provide the rating. The kind of people that you are working with, will they necessarily be decentralized in their approach, or do you see yourself working with centralized partners also? How much of a value add does a solution like Spydra bring in? So what Spydra is doing right now is, let's say you have a partner who needs to share this data and who needs access to this credit score. And the traditional solution today is via an API call, which, as I understand, creates a duplicate copy of the data, and then there are defined intervals of frequencies in which that data is synchronized, and that creates a cost, that creates a technological cost also. How much of a leap do you think happens for you when your counterparts or when your partners who need to use this score also become decentralized? Has anyone spoken to you about these challenges, or have you faced questions or potential feedback from partners that you've approached regarding decentralization itself? How do you tackle that usually?
So, like right now, what we are creating right now, we are creating score based on all the on-chain activities. But we know off-chain data are very important. So we are like gonna consider those data. Of course, it will be a mixture of off-chain plus on-chain. So now the topic of the value creation. Like the only thing, 1 rupee coin has the value because government has like backed it and created value for it. So score have the value only after someone is gonna create it. So in that case, Spydra can make more sense. And now the second thing is the decentralization thing. So I think currently decentralization is like kind of expensive, and we don't need decentralization of everything. And for example, we say data is important, data is important. The just pay any user like we're gonna take your data and make an social media app, and in return we're gonna pay 60% of whatever when we're gonna collect. He will happily share. It's not about the data. It's about the value, whatever you are generating from it. No, you should share it. So that part, if you are doing with the decentralization or anything, it's gonna work. Not just because of the decentralization or something. I guess it will be a mixture of both the things. Then it will be much better. Or we may in future we will have something else. I don't know. Let's see.
Okay,
I
in
guess it
terms
will be
of
mixture.
approaching this question a little more objectively, when you mentioned that a part of your growth strategy, a large part of your growth strategy was signing up with partners who can potentially add value to the product that you're building. Because
Yeah.
it's a credit rating system, my understanding is that your partner pipeline today includes, like I said, liquidity providers, trading exchanges, staking platforms, as well as potentially in the future traditional liquidity providers or traditional money lenders. That includes people who are banks today. Maybe right now the CBDC landscape is developing, which is partially decentralized but not completely. My first objective question is, have you had conversations with partners of this nature so far? Specifically where the challenge is that the partner themselves are a centralized solution, and in order to integrate with your product they need a degree of decentralization to for the match to work. Has that sort of a problem come up so far, is
No,
question number one.
we haven't faced that thing, but I don't think that the off-chain player like banks are gonna contact you. Like they do not even know the technology and all. They are in a bubble like banks is gonna work and all. They are not saying, even though SVG is collapsing or everything, they are in a very good mood. They won't gonna contact you unless it's RBI. Like they're gonna make some RBI is gonna make some rule, and then they will going to contact you. They haven't contacted us.
Okay. So Manish, I'd like to get your thoughts on this also. This is an interesting area. I know this is also an education level challenge or an awareness challenge, if you may. There are players, centralized players today who are not completely sold on the idea of DLT. I understand that Spydra is going to approach people as potential clients or potential businesses who are already sold and then going to go for DLT. Do you have plans to also educate the wider funnel that can potentially decentralize, wherein you today might be better positioned to foresee that sort of application or integration coming in? How would you approach this education perspective? Does my question make sense to you?
Yeah. So correct. So I think the first, as you've stated, that the first approach is obviously to reach out to players who are already thinking about blockchain, right? Who want to do build some solutions. I think that's where the match is almost perfect. That okay, if they want to do it, they want to do it in-house, or they want to outsource it someone like us. So there we can give them a very, very sleek solution which can just do those things in a very, very fast manner and a cost-effective manner also. Now, just to educate in terms of that, what are the different kind of use cases which can be solved through blockchain or through enterprise blockchain, we are going to create some case studies. So, for example, we are just going to launch by next week. So we are working within chain, use for basically tokenizing claim insurance process. Yeah, so which is very time taking. There are different parties who communicate with each other, and there are a lot of challenges. So we are going to create case studies like this, where a customer, or let's say customers, entities like hospitals, TPAs, or insurance guys can come and see the system, that how decentralization can help them in solving some of those issues. So we're going to create case studies in insurance, real estate, supply chain, manufacturing, pharma, so different retail, which will give you a flavor that how certain problems, if they want to solve through blockchain, can be solved using Spydra's platform. So this is the kind of I think focus will be to showcase that how our solution can help. Obviously, we also are now going to do a lot of let's say similar to this podcast, where we're going to showcase them. There are certain problems also, not just, let's say, the solutions itself, the use case itself, there are certain problems with blockchain also. And as it's a tech-based problem, which I think we have solved, which is one of the biggest problem in blockchain is that it's very difficult to query data, correct? It's very difficult to treat it like a database. And if you want to build a solution where the customer facing, you need to get some data from blockchain, it's almost very impossible. So the only solution which people have is that they take the data from blockchain and keep it in a regular centralized database, which essentially it's not actually then a proper decentralized solution. So we have created some solutions where it can actually help in solving the problem. So the data will come from the ledger itself, not from a centralized database. So we are going to also create some education around that, how we have solved building applications on enterprise by building those tools, where writing queries, debugging the solutions, creating events, and all those kind of things. So there will be a lot of education, at least in terms of the product features also, that if you want to build something enterprise space, you can come to us and we have ready-made tools which can ease your developer experience. So yeah, I think this will be one of the two focuses which we'll have. We have already done some releases in open source world, which are now, so our open source plugin is now being used in 85 countries around the world. So we are going to focus on these kind of activities to increase more engagement with the developer community and for the business community, who are basically the decision makers who want to implement these kind of solutions.
So speaking of in the blockchain space, this is a very interesting thing that you mentioned. First of all, the fact that instead of migrating data from the Explorer to a centralized database, you allow people to search for transaction history and data within the ledger itself. Things like this, technologies or solutions like this, do you think there is scope for patenting in this space? Is that something that Spydra will consider? Because you are also in that game wherein you are imagining and finding the right people to build that solution also, and then executing those solutions for DIY implementation and for people to use. Do you see any scope for patenting a particular way? For example, browsing through the ledger to verify data instead of migrating it to a central database. Is that part of your roadmap?
So I think it's actually a very good question. So I think it's just what we believe is just the other way. So we take some reference from companies like Hasura. So Hasura basically is a GraphQL. So basically, there's a company who builds, has worked on Graph query interface, and basically this first launched with the open source, and when it became famous, they launched a premium version of it. So the way we also think that it's actually the way, we are going to make it open source so that people can use it, but then integration will require some of the time and resource. So what we're saying is that you can get the same solution inbuilt, where you don't need to also integrate that stuff. But we are going just the other way. We are going to make it open source and let people use it in their projects, and then if they want to have the same feature inbuilt, then Spydra has it. Yeah. So
I like this approach. This is what Automatic Corporation, they revolutionized publication throughout the internet, right? The guys behind WordPress. They took today 80% of Web2 is powered by WordPress, which is a metric they never failed to mention. But they also they made the software and the platform open source, and then they realized that when people needed to use specialized and streamlined versions of it, they'd need assistance. So the managed solutions play came into Okay. So before I move on to the last segment of the discussion, which is more to do with founder mindset, that is another high element of curiosity for me, especially coming from Manish, which I also believe is a very important factor for success. When I say success, I'm also I'm limiting myself to the realm of financial success. So I'm a failed entrepreneur in that aspect, wherein I once tried to launch a product, built a team, raised a seed check, and launched an MVP, but faced certain challenges of traction and follow fundraising. Erebus right now is on a brave mission to go ahead and introduce a very new type of platform. I'm sure he also faces the same challenge in terms of finding the right people, smarter fits coming in who are aligned with the mission. As a sum total for your entire enterprise to be successful, for your company to be successful on all fronts, for the team to be aligned, for your fundraising efforts to go the way you have visualized in your head, all of that requires a certain amount of personal mindset to come in. So I'm going to come back with questions to Manish and Erebus both individually on this aspect, because I find both of you uniquely inspiring. as far as this aspect is concerned. But at this juncture, I also want to invite Jeffrey to sort of intervene and speak about. So the subject that we just covered here is the need for decentralization from a consumer education perspective and from an enterprise perspective. Your opinions on from a corporate or VC or organized VC perspective that is looking at ROI, how is the landscape looking like today? Or how optimistic / conservative / pessimistic is the VC landscape today regarding the open challenges that Manish and Erebus have said, which is to be more specific, whether every industry needs to adopt some form of decentralization today is still not clear. Players such as Spydra have a definite reason to come and and make a strong case for the need for decentralization in specific use cases, and some centralized players, traditional players, will still resist, as Erebus mentioned, banks being at the top of that list. What is what is a corporate VC opinion on this landscape right now? How has it changed over the last 2 years? How do you foresee that evolving?
Yeah, it's getting more and more professionalized, right? Like there's a huge shakeout going on right now, where the cowboys are being shaken out, and the professionals, quote, are taking over. But like you have to be careful, right? Because Web3 or blockchain is just a tool, right? And you have to be careful that you don't want to just use the tool to use the tool, right? It has to make sense. And there are pros and cons, and blockchain doesn't fit everywhere. It's also at the point that you really have to look at like, what problem am I solving, and can that be solved by a blockchain or not? But like that doesn't even matter, right? Because especially consumers don't care if something is Web3 based or Web2 based in that sense, most of it, if it just solves their problem, right? And it's really about like what it is, right? So when it comes to definition of Web3 is that the user has an upside in the service, right? The user is using the service, and by using the service and by like having some stake in that service, they also can earn some money back. But then of course the question is this like net positive or net negative, right? So the whole premise of Web3 is that, for instance, your data is yours, right? Personally, I'm not a big fan of computer generated NFT profile pictures, right? That's not my thing. But I really believe in NFTs as in basically a in-game collectible that you won because you're getting somewhere inside of the game, and you're getting level up, and then you can use that or either sell that NFT and get some money out of that, or you could use that NFT in another game, right? You're earning a hammer, and then you go from one game to another game, and then in the other game you can also use a hammer. Like that's something that I definitely believe in. But coming back to the don't try to use a technical solution to find the problem, because that's quite often what's used. Like, I know, for instance, blockchain, right? Let's find a problem that can be solved with blockchain. No, it still should be the other way around, right? Find that problem, validate it. Is the market big enough? Is the is there enough like traction for it, and can you find the people around it to solve that? If the solution is a part of blockchain, then yes, then use it, right? But if it isn't, don't try to push it in. And that's also what now more and more becomes clear. It's also quite often that the like blockchain itself and like Bitcoin started as something like, I don't trust, verify, right? Now, quite often when you're talking about like, I always call it the mango on the blockchain, there is still somewhere a party that you have to trust, that mango that you have in your hand that has a hash or a QR code or something else like that is indeed the mango that was given that QR code, right? So there's still one part of somewhere in that supply chain, there is still an opportunity to be ambiguous, and then you still have to trust somebody. For me, like as soon as it's digital, yes, you can do way more for that. As soon as it comes physical, a physical product, a physical something with a label on it, then at that point you still have to trust something. And that's actually what and that's why I foresee that Spydra is also on a good way, is because it's B2B. And like now you already have to trust your supplier anyway, right? But now you have just a little bit more of insight. And you have a little bit more of tracking. You have just a little bit more of insight in like where something went or where something is going, right? Or where there were some mutations on that. So I think there are definitely use cases, especially in the B2B space, where at that point people can use something like this to make things visible. And when it comes to an end user, right? If I go to a bar, then the bouncer doesn't have to know what my birth date is, right? He only has to know that I'm 18 or above, right? So as soon as at that point, if there is a way to see like, okay, this person, and it's only not only that, because at that point they probably had to have something like AI facial recognition or eye scan or fingerprint or something else like that that makes me unique. But then at that point they're like, okay, he is 18 or above, right? And that's the most important thing. And then your data, like me, like my birthday, is not open in public to that bouncer that sees like, oh, it's actually your birthday today, right? Or something else like that. So there are still a lot of use cases out there that just say like, okay, like information that is now spread around freely, because there's no other way to do that, will be more private, because of the fact that it's only checked like, hey, do you earn more than say $1 million rupees, or do you earn less than $1 million rupees, right? The actual amount that you earn doesn't matter, as long as some like data source that we all say is secure and we trust says yes it is, or no it isn't.
Even when you, for what Erebus and team are building, when you add a layer of zero knowledge proofing to that, I think that that's something that is doable in the future. And today banks, when somebody calls you or, they start, do you need a credit card? This is how it goes in India. And if you say yes, they're going to start asking some very intimate questions like, how much do you draw in hand? What EMIs are you paying today? Which technically is not necessary. If a competent authority is providing a credit rating and taking accountability for the fact that, yes, this is a go ahead, that should be it. Just like the bouncer does not need to know the actual age. And yeah, I think a lot. So what you're saying is VCs, even as a VC, you are still optimistic about the growth opportunities in segments such as this. We will need to do a separate session, I believe, altogether for the concept, in order to emphasize ZK and the possibilities that ZK opens up in this domain. I will also make it a point to invite you there, Erebus, and potentially Manish and other people. But here, yeah. So help me, correct me if the summarization is going away from what you intended to say. So VCs are still actually optimistic about what remains to be validated or what remains to be solved through the real application of blockchain as a solution to existing problems, such as the bouncer use case that you mentioned, or the fact that banks don't need to know the entire financial history before making a credit linked decision.
Yeah, correct. And there's still a lot to do, right? But especially when it comes to digital IDs, right? Like that's a challenge because quite often there has to be either that like a government should start leading that, right? Like I wouldn't say should, but like probably the implementation of that would be government related, right? I can still remember many moons ago. I was part of the Dutch government in innovation project somewhere, ON21 that was called, and they had at that point they were working with like digital on chip ID, like what we now all use as in like in your bank card, but then at that point as your ID card as a person, right? That's something that is already like now being rolled out because it's on your passport or on your ID card, right? Now it might be even contactless, right? So to really roll something out like that, then quite often you have a bigger power needed to establish a standard. And at that point, it will be very hard as a VC to get to that particular organization because it's usually driven by a bigger entity than you as a VC could go into. But then, of course, what you could do is invest in companies that are doing parts of those of the total package that the government would start using that. An organization that develops a part of that and then gets acquired or will be a service provider to that bigger package of solutions, right? But like just as an example for me, right? Like I now come on a regular basis to India also, and I have to apply for a visa, right? And every single time I have to fill out the whole form. Right, and every single time I have to fill out who my father is, where my mother is, where they were born, and all those kind of things. Right, like if in one way or another I could have that as a digitalization, and I only have to fill it out once, and if that's being accepted, then I don't have to fill it out every single time, and I just enter my chip or my fingerprint or my iris scan or something else like that. That would make life way easier for a lot of people.
Yes, and there's both irony and some recollection as far as this whole identity and government intervention bit is concerned. Back in 2010, I was yet to drop out of engineering school, and I ran into Mr. Nandan Nilekani, who was one of the co-founders of Infosys. And at that point of time, he was about to, the UID project, or what became Aadhaar today, was still not fully formed. And we spoke in a hospital waiting room, and he briefly walked me through the need for biometric identifiers. And his vision was in place. In his head, he said that this is going to solve these challenges. The same things, like when you're trying to validate your identity, you don't need to enter your data multiple times. A biometric signature will solve the need for specific information to be disclosed. But the irony there is that when UID finally got rolled out, it became the biggest centralization and privacy debate because of leaks that happened. The other thing that you mentioned, players did start coming in, and they started building solutions which would help the integration of Aadhaar. So in bits and pieces, people evolved solutions like OTP-less came in. That was one of the products that comes to mind, which said that you can just enter your Aadhaar data and the whoever is trying to verify your identity for a KYC requirement can just send an OTP to your phone or your WhatsApp, and you can just verify, and then they don't need to know your additional details. So solutions are still progressing. Before we move on to the last segment of questioning, because Jeffrey did mention this, Manish, do you have plans, or do you have plans of integrating or partnering with or solving for a centralized or a government authority also, other than private enterprise players?
So, see, conceptually, we call them oracles, correct?
Okay.
So, let's say if there is a blockchain and it can be public private, if you require some data which has to come from outside, correct? So we call them as oracles. And yeah, so we as a platform do support oracles where the data, let's say if in terms of the Sybil, so there will be a request which will be made from the smart contract to a Sybil, and then the basically Oracle will return the data. So yeah, so we not only government bodies, but let's say across different systems ranging from, let's say, if a very simple example can be EMR companies like Athena Health or HRMS tools, which have some data. Now, if they have APIs and where, let's say, for some reason I need a data about an employee or I need a data about a patient, and if that system already has the data, so if they have APIs, they can be integrated as oracles and they can share the data, and then obviously business logic will be built on top of this. So yeah, so I think so they come. So the concept is basically oracles, and yeah, definitely we plan to support that. And if the data is coming from outside, we will handle that.
Okay, so we are almost at the end of the conversation, and this is related. So as entrepreneurs, you're expected to be the primary spokesperson of your company. Founder mindset plays a huge role in terms of how successful you are at that game. And I want to ask both of you individually, starting with you, Manish, what are some of the founder mindset lessons that you've received from your mentors or people that whom you have looked up to in your journey, existing entrepreneurs maybe, and what have been your key takeaways? What do you continue implementing? What would you suggest to someone who's an early stage founder today like Erebus, in terms of I'm speaking about keeping up general positivity, staying optimistic about your product. I personally have always felt that this plays a huge role, if you, at least 50%, if not more, in terms of determining how successful you're as leader of the team, as captain of the ship. How important is founder mindset? How do you sustain that? How do you stay in that zone?
I think one of the most important learnings which I've got in my all the previous startups is never be in love of your idea. I think that is something which is very, very important. That if it's your idea, it doesn't prove that it's the best idea out. So if it doesn't work out, then obviously you should be open to changes, suggestions, and whatnot. Second thing, I think I have worked with very, very good managers in my previous professional life, and I had some good co-founders also. So I think one thing which is very important is that the team which you're making is finally the core piece of it. And let's say for some reason there is somebody who wants to leave the organization, and if he's a very core piece, so I think do anything to just sustain those guys. I think that's where it's very important that your core team is like the crux of it. Even if the idea doesn't work, let's say if you have so anything can go wrong, but the team is very important part of it, and you need to identify. And I am a sports person, correct? So I love cricket and I play cricket. So I think important fundamental making a team is that you can't have all the best batsmen, all the best bowlers. That doesn't form a team. So you have to have 3-4 main core people and then form a team around that. So you need to figure out, apart from co-founders, that okay, these are 3-4 core people, without you will not be survive. So I think when I was making this team also, I figured out, okay, these are 3-4 people I need, hell what may come. So even if I have to, let's say, forego or something, so I'll just make sure, but I need to make sure that these guys are happy. So I think that's where it's very important that you have that team intact, and just bet on them and give them all the freedom. And if you have anything to obviously guide them, definitely, but 99% time they will guide you. So.
That's an interesting insight. Don't be in love with an idea, but definitely be in love with your core team. And
yeah.
Taking the same question to you, Erebus, I actually, now that I think, I don't know a lot about your core team yet. I think you are the only person from the leadership team at FourPi that I have interacted with. What has been your experience in this era? What has worked for you in terms of being in the founder mindset zone, flow state, if you may, and what has worked for you till date? What keeps you going?
Yeah, the thing is, yeah, team matters. We think we know about product and we know about things. We do not know about anything. Okay, I'm not being realistic, but yeah, we think lots of VC or whatever who is, they do not know. They just bet. Okay, it's like the number of parameters that can affect the product. No, you can't even know the number of. Okay, that's many like parameters can affect a product. You just try multiple things and something works, and you just become ready to whatever it is coming. You're just gonna face it. That's what you're training to become, and the team matters because at the end, whatever you face, and you just come to them, and they're gonna make the next. They're gonna solve the problem, and yeah, man, that's the thing. And yeah, we just do the thing, whatever right it is. And let's be honest, no one knows what's coming and what's going to happen. We were thinking that we are the center of the universe. Here we are. Once upon a time, we were thinking the sun revolves around us. Here we are. No, it's not like that. We are just animals. We're gonna die, and yeah, this is how it works. We just try different things, and we think we're gonna success. Yeah, multiple.
I
Yeah,
kind of agree with that. Yeah. So we evolved from, I mean, on that note, we evolved from imagining ourselves as a geocentric universe to heliocentric now. I am always these days relying around self-centric universe. Each individual is at the center of their own universe, if you think about it. But yeah, as in terms of leading a team towards success or guiding a team towards success, even when, let's say, everybody else in the team is sort of in disarray or in doubt regarding whether this is working, whether it's a fundraise thing that is stuck, whether you're in the pipeline, whether you're constantly experiencing barriers, but still need to push through. At that stage, what are the top three things? One is, as Manish explained, the support and the availability of your core team members who believe in the same idea and mission as you do. Is there anything else? To be very objective and specific, I was trying to get in and try to get some insider secrets out, such as, do you meditate twice a day? Do you work out? Do you now what I've learned right now is Manish plays cricket, which explains a lot about the leadership mindset and keeping the ship together. Similarly, for you, Erebus, what are some non-technical, non-business activities that help you stay in the game?
So I don't, as of now, like I don't play any sports, but sports teaches you a lot of things. Feel like whatever the situation is, just try to give your 100% and 100%. But this is what we are learning. No, we are just not trying to give up. Like every day you face something, and next day you try, and next day you try and come up with something else. So this is what the core principle is. Just keep trying. That's it. Like nobody knows. I'm giving an example. Like I'm not shitting on anyone. Just ask any VC or anyone. They don't know. And whoever has taken more number of right decisions, they are not data driven. They just know. Ask any musicians, like in any part of the they have made Bollywood or Hollywood, whatever movies they have made. Just ask them, like, is this song gonna work or not? They're gonna tell you like it's going to work on like it's going to work, maybe it's not going to work, but they won't be able to tell you like why it's not going to work. They are not data driven. They have instinct, like they have trained their brains model so much times, they are considering so much parameters that they can't even explain. That's the yeah, that's we just try. It's not like the uh, we kind of sadistic in nature. We just try different things and we feel bad, and again we try different things. That's it.
I don't find it sadistic at all. I think I'm able to understand what you're trying to say. James Cameron used to put the same messaging across, like the future is uncertain, but be okay with the uncertainty and push through despite it.
And we are kind of sadistic. I'll tell you why. For example, the Manish Bhai, and he is the second time founder. Okay, I'm very certain he can't sleep without the stress. At the moment he sell whatever he leave his company, whatever gap he has, he won't that we need now. We think we need that patience, we need that peace. We don't need that peace. We are so addicted of that. We think if we get addicted by the cocaine and other things, we get addicted by this serotonin hit. That's why, for example, you may have seen lots of travelers who have traveled their entire life, they can't settle at the end. this thing always was
The love for wanderlust, the
bigger.
love for risk, the love for uncertainty sort of becomes an addiction.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, this has been one of the most insightful sessions this entire season. So thank you to both you, Manish, and to you, Erebus. Contrasting opinions as I imagined at the start of the episode, but as a whole, very enlightening for someone who's watching this, from a third person perspective. For our viewers, I'm sure this has been the most engaging, if not, at least one of the most engaging episodes that we've ever had. Before we call it a day, I just want to leave the floor open. If you have any questions for each other, more specifically, if Erebus or Manish have any questions for Jeffrey or the other way around.
It's already an hour, so I think let's not, but we'll connect maybe after this, and if we have, I think that's it for now for us. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So, Jeffrey, any parting words for our founders?
Thanks both for indeed being available and doing this. Also learned a lot during this session, so thank you very much for that. And
thank you.
And of course, Spydra. I'd like to see you grow indeed during this program, so that's also great. And nice to meet you, Erebus, and I hope to connect with you next time I'm visiting India again.
Yeah, and it was not a personal attack on you. I was just saying what I think.
No, I understand. That's what okay. The forum is for. Yes. And thank you for again, I know I'm just repeating this, but I'm actually very grateful for the opinions that were free flowing today. So thank you for being a part of this podcast. For those watching, thank you for watching till the very end. Don't forget to join Graviton to receive more updates on episodes like this. Do follow Spydra and FourPi to understand what happens next in their journey of growth. And until next time, full speed ahead. Thanks, guys.